Okay, we expect to spend about 20 to 25 minutes with you, and we will open up the floor to any questions you have at the end of the orientation. However, if you do have an issue where you're not hearing, you're not seeing, you can certainly let us know by letting Salma know through the chat, and then we'll try to intervene as we go through. So the purpose of this orientation is to help our online math students to connect to the instructors, the resources, and the other support personnel that will all contribute to your success. We know that being in the classroom, we do have some opportunities to connect face-to-face, but when we're in an online environment, we just have to make a more concerted effort to have our students feel that connection and to make sure that they're taking advantage of the resources that we have for them. We have divided the orientations this semester to make them a little bit more specific to certain courses. So tonight's orientation is specifically for students in our trigonometry, pre-calculus algebra, and elementary statistic courses. We do have some orientations for the other online math courses. So if you're not in one of these three courses, you'll want to check back with your instructor about those alternate orientations. So again, the focus tonight will be for these three courses. We do have several instructors teaching these courses, so some of the information that we share with you will be general and will apply across the board, but we always encourage you to check with your individual instructor for more details or for some clarification about their expectations, because there might be some differences from one instructor to the other. So you may have a class with Professor Brown, Professor Stevens, Professor Boreski, Professor Osborne, or Dr. Slack. In an online math course, instruction is a little different. When you're in a seated course and you're in the classroom setting, interacting with people in three-dimensional space, the instruction is very apparent. It's whatever the lecture is that the instructor has prepared and whatever class activities you participate in. But when you're in a fully online course, the instruction can at times get lost. So you have to be more intentional about connecting to it. Your instructors have either prepared some guided lecture videos or they have posted links to resources that they expect you to work through before you try to make sense of it, before you try to go into a homework assignment, for instance, to practice with the concepts. So we do encourage you to set some time aside in your schedule where you're going to work through that instructional piece of your course before you try to apply any of those concepts through your various assignments. If you don't make time for your instruction and you try to jump straight into completing assignments, you're likely to struggle because you have not gone through a very natural part of the learning process. There are no set meeting times for instruction. So again, you'll have to be intentional about scheduling yourself for working through that instructional piece. You're expected to adhere to all the posted due dates for the assignments in your course, as well as for completing your tests within the specified testing windows as communicated by your instructor. Online courses offer a lot of flexibility. However, our online courses are not self-paced courses. You will have some due dates to help keep you on track so that you can complete the course by the end of the semester. The due dates vary from instructor to instructor. So again, refer back to your course syllabus and those due dates as communicated to you by your instructor. In an online course, you will have to be very organized and have really great self-discipline so that you can structure your time. In the lack of structure, you have a lot of flexibility, but you still will need to set aside a good amount of time each week to work through this course. It is human nature to leave things until the very last possible moment because we have other competing priorities. So you just have to keep realigning your priorities to carve out the time in your schedule each week to devote to this class. I recommend having a set time on set days that you just repeat from week to week. For instance, you might say, Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8, I'm going to be working on this course as if it was synchronous, as if I was connecting with my instructor and my classmates. That's going to be my designated time. And then on Thursdays, I'm going to go from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., for instance. You could see how if you don't do that intentionally, due dates may come and go and you feel like you're just trying to make up for lost time. So be proactive in scheduling yourself to work in your courses. Academic honesty is expected at all times. Academic honesty has to be defined. What do we mean by that? Each instructor should be communicating with the students as to what assignments can be done with assistance. For example, it's very likely that when you're working on a homework assignment that you'll have some built-in tools in your online system to help you, succeed with those problems, or that you can collaborate with your peers on homework assignments. But it could be that on quizzes, you're expected to not use resources. Certainly for tests, you're most definitely not expected to use outside resources. Cell phones should never be anywhere near you during a test, for instance. So by academic honesty, you want to get clarification from your instructor if you're not sure, but certainly make sure that anything that is not authorized stays completely away from your testing area so that there's no reason for anyone to suspect dishonesty. And certainly we want to avoid the stress of having to prove your honesty, but just be clear with what you have access to. There are consequences for academic dishonesty, and those consequences are outlined by your instructor through the course syllabus as well as through policies stated in the Student Code of Conduct. Beware that testing is proctored with audio and visual surveillance, regardless of which testing method you decide to use, and we'll go into some details in just a bit about what your testing options are. In terms of technology, know that in order to have what you need for a fully online course, you will need a reliable desktop or laptop computer. From our experience, Chromebooks, cell phones, and tablets don't have enough capabilities to support the various documents and apps and video playback and submission requirements that are needed for a fully online course. So make sure that you have a desktop or a laptop that you have access to in order to work. Of course, we do have desktop and laptop options on campus, but you'll want to have access to something outside of our operating hours because you may not be able to finish everything during our open hours at the college. You also need to have access to a reliable source of Wi-Fi, and this is big because there are parts of Lake and Sumter counties where Wi-Fi is an issue at home. So if you don't have good Wi-Fi at your most comfortable place, you're going to have to identify where you can find it and make sure that you are able to spend time with good Wi-Fi connections. Again, we do have Wi-Fi on campus, and our Wi-Fi is free and it extends out throughout our locations all the way through the parking lot areas. So you can even work from your car if you have to. And of course, our libraries are a wonderful place for you to not only have Wi-Fi, but to also get the support for your learning through our tutors. In terms of calculators, we'll go through the trigonometry courses first, and then we'll have a separate slide for pre-calculus and statistics. So for the trigonometry online courses, you'll be able to use a basic 4-function calculator for modules 1, 2, and 3. And you'll need a scientific or a graphing calculator for your take-home assignments. So for the tests, you'll only be able to use a basic 4-function calculator or a scientific calculator. You will not have access to graphing capabilities for those first 3 modules. However, once you move on to module 4 and progress through the end of the semester, then students will be able to not only use a scientific calculator, but they'll be able to use graphing calculators if they choose. You won't be required to, but you'll have that as an option. So you actually have the whole gamut of calculators, only the basic ones for the first 3 modules, and then you'll be able to use more powerful technology as you move through the rest of the semester. If you have questions on a specific modular assignment, again, seek that clarification from your instructor. All right, moving on to our pre-calculus and our statistics courses. For these courses, you can use either a scientific or a graphing calculator throughout the entire course. I teach statistics. Actually, I've taught pre-calc as well. The scientific calculators are powerful enough to do almost everything that you'll need. The graphing calculators are much more expensive, and they do, of course, have that graphing capability. But in terms of functionality, in terms of can I do this course without a graphing calculator? Yes. So a graphing calculator, for just to give you an example on cost, you know, a TI 30 you can probably purchase for about $20. The TI 84, which is the graphing calculator, now you're looking at about $120. So there is a substantial cost difference between these two. So I just want to make the case that the scientific, that less expensive calculator is powerful enough to do almost everything for the course. And then those things that it can't do, your instructor will offer some other ways for you to be able to work those problems without needing that graphing calculator. All calculators are available for checkout at our libraries, at our learning centers. So if you're not able to purchase it, or you just don't want to invest in it, you know that you're not likely to use it after this course, then I would encourage you to check with your libraries or your learning centers to see what calculators are available for loan. We use Canvas as our college's learning management system, and then we use my math lab or my stat lab in the case of statistics, which is a Pearson product for the actual math assignments and math content. These two systems have to be linked together. They have to talk to each other. And so one of the first things you'll want to do, if you haven't done so already, is to connect your Canvas course to your My Math Lab or My Stat Lab course. Your instructor has included a step-by-step guide as to how to do this. You will need to purchase an access code to be able to continue working in My Math Lab or My Stat Lab, but there is a 14-day temporary access to help students get started with their courses if there's any delay in purchasing those permanent access codes. So you'll have that information from your instructor in your Canvas course, but just know that we want you in there working already. We want you to get off to a good start. Just don't forget, if you're using the temporary access, to purchase that permanent access code as soon as possible so that there's no interruption in accessing your materials. We tend to run into this a lot when it comes to the first test. Students are wanting to take their first test, but their temporary access has expired. They haven't purchased their new code, and they're not able to take their test. So just be proactive so that you don't have any interruptions. All right, let's go through your testing options. You will have 2 ways to complete your tests for your online courses. The first option is the preferred option, and that is to test in person at one of the college's testing centers. We have a testing center at the Southlake campus in Building 2, room 209, and then we have a testing center at the Leesburg campus in the Center for Teaching and Learning building. To test in person, you have to make an appointment before the test, usually the week before the test, and some instructors actually will also ask you to submit your confirmation details just to make sure that they know that you've been proactive in making those appointments. The appointments can be made up to 24 hours in advance. However, know that appointments sometimes are not available because they're booked up. All the slots have been taken by other students. So the sooner you can make those appointments, the more choices you will have. Instructors usually offer 2 or 3 days where each test will be open. So check your course syllabus, look at what your instructor has posted in the course to see what that testing window is for each of your tests, and then make those appointments in advance. There are 3 testing appointments per day. One is from 9 to noon, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The other is from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then the last one starts at either 4:30 or 5 p.m. and goes until the test center closes. You are expected to report for your test at the beginning of each of those testing windows. So if you make an appointment for the 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. window, you are expected to be at the testing center by 9 a.m. So it's not an open window for you to drop in at some point during the 3 hours. You're expected to be there at the beginning of that window. Some tests are 3-hour tests, but everybody begins at 9, even if your test is only for an hour and 15 minutes. So everybody begins at the beginning of that testing window. The one exception to that is those evening appointments. Those appointments that start at 4:30 or at 5 p.m., that's the only window where you're allowed to arrive later, and that's so that we can accommodate our working students who are just not able to make it to campus by 4:30 or 5. If you are going to be arriving late in that evening testing window, you must type in a comment when you submit your appointment online to notify the testing staff. And we also want to make sure that you are aware of when the testing center closes, so that if you're arriving later, you still should give yourself enough time to complete the test. So for example, if the testing center is due to close at 7:30 and your test is for an hour and 30 minutes, then arriving at 6:30 is not going to give you enough time to complete the test. So you want to make sure that you get there with enough time to finish before the testing center closes. And as I said earlier, the testing center also has audio and visual surveillance. And on occasion, we do see incidences of academic dishonesty. And so we provide the visual and audio recordings to our Dean of Students as evidence of academic dishonesty. So just be aware of that. The second option for testing is if you cannot come to campus, if you are not able to test in person, we do offer an online system for proctoring called ProctorU. ProctorU will allow you to take your test anywhere that you have an online connection, so it can be done at home. If you decide to use ProctorU, you must have an external webcam. I want to emphasize this. The webcam that I'm using right now on my laptop that's integrated is not going to work. Why? Because you're not seeing what my hands are doing. You're not seeing my keyboard. You're not seeing my test papers. There's no way to position your device so that your testing area is visible. In order for us to see the testing area, it must be an external camera, and I have one here somewhere, that you can pick up in your hand and that you can position in such a way that your entire testing space is visible. Webcams can be checked out from our learning centers as well while supplies last, right? We don't have an infinite supply, but if you are not able to purchase one or just don't want to purchase one, you can check with our learning centers to see if they still have some available. They are not super expensive. You can order an external webcam for about $20 on Amazon or some other third-party vendors. So it's not a huge cost. And you might have a friend who can let you borrow it for your tests, right? So you can check with that, but it is required. With ProctorU, you will need to make an appointment for your test at least 3 days in advance of the test, and we certainly recommend that we make it even earlier. The ProctorU appointments don't have the same restrictions as the in-person appointments. They actually have appointments available from very early in the morning all the way until late at night. So I've even seen some testing appointments close to like 10 p.m. So you will have more variety in what you can register for your appointment, but ProctorU is national. They service a lot of different institutions across the United States. So you're actually competing for those appointments more so because it's not just Lake Sumter State College students. So you'll want to make those appointments well in advance and certainly within 72 hours. Once you're in that 72-hour window before your test, you will not see any appointments available. The system will not allow you to make an appointment. So if you're not able to make an appointment through ProctorU, then you're going to need to find a way to come and test on campus. So again, if you know coming to campus is not an option for you, please be proactive in getting your ProctorU appointment set up in advance. The testing dates and times are set by your instructor. Those vary, so please check with your course schedule. If you are using ProctorU, we're not able to collect your paper physically because we don't see you in person, so you will need to print your work paper in advance through Canvas, and then you will need to scan and upload your written work to Canvas within 10 minutes of submitting your exam electronically. And that's really important, and your instructor will reiterate this. That's so that you're not copying down all the problems, taking a couple hours to work everything out, unsupervised, and then submitting your work for credit. So as soon as you submit your test online, you'll have 10 minutes to scan your work and submit it through Canvas. And we do have instructions in Canvas as to how to download some free apps on your smartphone that will allow you to very quickly scan and very quickly upload to Canvas. And I went through it with my own son, who was taking classes at Lake Sumter online. And it took a little while to set it up, but once you set it up and you've practiced using it, it really goes really fast. You just go click, 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 everything scans, and you can upload it through even your Canvas app on your smartphone. Okay. When you use ProctorU, you will have a live proctor who is going to be entering the password for you. They also will check your photo ID. They'll ask you to do a 360-degree scan of your testing area to make sure there's no one else in your testing area and that, everything seems like it's in order. And so you will have that live interaction. That piece does take time, and especially for your first test using ProctorU, just know it's going to be a little lengthier as you kind of navigate the system. Once you use ProctorU once, it does get a little easier because you know what to expect, but just know that you might be spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe setting it up before you're actually able to start working on your test. Again, audio and video surveillance is occurring, and so we will have those testing sessions recorded, again, to ensure academic integrity. And as I said earlier, you will need to scan and upload your work into Canvas right after you submit your test. Here are some examples of why we require an external webcam. If you can see from these pictures, the external camera can be positioned to look at the entire testing space. We need to be able to see you just as if you were sitting in one of our classrooms. We want to be able to see what calculator you're using, make sure it's one of the approved calculators. We need to be able to see your test papers, what your hands are doing, your computer screen, your keyboard. And again, it might be a little intimidating because, people are watching, but we watch you when you're in the classroom as well. So just setting up a good camera angle is going to be really important, because there's no point in having an external webcam and then positioning it right on top of where your laptop is, where the view is exactly what you're seeing right now. So it's not going to go right where your integrated camera is. It's going to be positioned so that we can view your entire workspace. All right, let's talk a little bit about academic support. So know that we do have tutoring available for all three of the courses that we're talking about tonight: trigonometry, pre-calculus, and statistics. That tutoring occurs through our learning centers, and our our virtual tutors are accessible through the link that you see here on this PowerPoint. And you also have this link in your Canvas courses. So you can use that link to connect to one of the tutors. On the next page, I'm going to show you what that link takes you to. It's a page that looks like this. So if you see, you'll have a little tutoring icon here, and then you have the hours where tutors are available. All right, so you'll have that link in your courses as well as this PowerPoint. To stay organized, we encourage you to purchase a 3-ring binder and a notebook to keep everything for your course together. We know some of you might be taking multiple courses. Have something dedicated for your math course. You'll want a place to archive everything that you've completed, everything that you have printed off, so that it makes everything more accessible to you. You're not going to be turning in any materials in the physical form, but in order to keep your digital submissions organized, we have found that this is very helpful. And we said at the beginning, if you can enter your name, professor's name, and the class in the chat, we will record your attendance and then communicate that back to your instructor so that he and she know that you have participated. So at this time, we can open up the floor to any questions that you may have. And whatever I can't answer, we do have some other math gurus here participating who might be able to jump in. Correct. For attendance, you're typing in your name, your professor's name, and your class in the chat. Salma, are we launching the poll or just the chat?
It will just be the chat for today.
Just the chat for today. Okay. So if you've done it once and you know it's in the chat, you're good. You don't have to repeat it. We will look for duplicates, so that's okay if you just want to be super safe. But remember, name, professor's name, and class, all of that together so that we can report the information back to your teacher, to your instructor, to your professor. I see a question, do both tests and quizzes need to be scheduled? No, only the tests need to be scheduled for proctoring. Quizzes can be completed at any time before the due date without proctoring appointments. If you're using ProctorU, you will go to the ProctorU website. You're going to create a student account, and then you're going to search for the test that you're trying to make an appointment for. And all of those instructions should be in your Canvas course. If you don't see it in your Canvas course, ask your instructor, but they should have a step-by-step guide as to how to make those appointments, both for ProctorU as well as for the in-person exams at the testing center. Correct. You'll have some flexibility as to how to complete your homework and your quizzes. As long as you submit them before the due date, they can be done at home. They can be done anywhere you have a Wi-Fi connection. You don't need to make appointments or be monitored for those. It's only the tests that you'll need to make appointments for. And the tests will be during specific dates. So you'll have to look at your course calendar so that you know what dates your instructor has designated for you to make appointments.
I see another question.
Students too. I just want to say hi. I see a lot of names of people I've taught, and you're back. Hopefully, it's not for the same class. Hopefully, you've succeeded and you're moving on. Go ahead, Sam.
I just saw another question in the chat for Trig. Is there a lot of written assignments that need to be scanned in? Being that you're in an online class, a lot of the material that you are required to turn in is turned in via scanning it in some way. Definitely the tests, but check your Canvas for specifics, depending on what your professor requires you to turn in.
And again, for scanning, you don't have to buy a scanner. Don't go out and invest in a scanner. There are some free scanning apps that you can download to your smartphone. The Adobe scanning app is my favorite. I think it's the most user-friendly. And you have to practice with it to, get comfortable with it. But from experience, it makes it super easy to scan because you're just taking pictures and you don't even have to click the picture button. You hover it over whatever you're trying to scan. It recognizes when it's ready to take the snapshot. It takes it and then you say, okay, I want one more page. So once you practice, you'll see that it's pretty seamless, but that first time you might feel like, oh, I don't know how to do this. So don't wait until test day to practice using the scanning app, right? You want to make sure that test day you're focused on doing well on the exam and not distracted by technology and procedures. Okay. If you make an appointment in person, but you end up having to switch to ProctorU, that's a good question. As long as you're able to find an appointment, right? So if it's a last minute change, you may not find any available appointments. So as long as the change is made in advance and something is available, you should be able to make the appointment in the other way that you had originally chose. And you want to always cancel your original appointment. Obviously, people are competing for appointments. So if you know you don't need an appointment anymore, make sure you cancel it. And I also should add that you don't have to commit to one way or the other for the entire semester. So if you decide to test ProctorU for your first test and you're like, oh, this isn't working the way I expected it to, I think I'm going to come in person for the next one. You do have that option to switch the type of testing procedure that you choose on a test per test basis. I think I've answered 2 or 3 questions at the same time with that one. And I didn't introduce myself. We probably lost a whole bunch of people already. I'm Dina Wilder Lopez. I'm Dean of the Math Department, and I teach in the department as well, and I've taught online. So that's why I said I recognize some of the names. But we wish you well. We're here because we want to communicate that we are interested in your success and that there are a lot of resources for you to take advantage of to help your learning. We're here to have you walk away from our classes with lots of new skills and with continued success as you move forward. If you don't have any questions and you've already submitted your attendance information through the chat, then you are free to go.
I see another question. If you have 2 classes that utilize Pearson, do you need to buy the access code twice for each class? The answer is yes. The classes differ in the content that is presented within Pearson. So for instance, if you're taking a trig class, the material that you see on my math lab Pearson will be different versus if you're taking a statistics class.
Okay, we're dwindling down. It's like a countdown. 12, 11, 10. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.